Hello and welcome to Our Family's True Tales of the Supernatural. I want to put more of my family members' tales in this episode and even add a story that's a bit inspirational. I wanted to start including a few inspirational tales like this for a few reasons. One is that some of my relatives warned me to avoid focusing on things that are negative, dark, or evil. They also recommended that I not solely focus only on the negative. They also wanted to make sure I didn't end up attracting things that are negative. They also wanted to make sure that I didn't get into any dangerous activities like seances, conjurings, or spirit boards, to which I can say that I don't care for any of those things and I'm staying away from those things. In my opinion, they can lead to a lot of trouble. So I don't want any of that stuff. So I'll start off this episode by telling you folks about an inspirational yet supernatural story from a family member. This story was related to me by my sister Dana's husband Jack and Jack's dad, Mike Stevens. That's not their real names, but that's what I'm calling them for this episode to protect their privacy. Now, my sister's husband Jack told me about something that happened to his dad, Mike Stevens, a long time ago when Mike was a child. This happened many years ago during the time of the Depression in the 1930s. Many people in America were poor or were struggling to pay their bills at this time. This was the same case with young Mike's family as well. The Stevens family liked to help some of the poor folks and the hobos that traveled the nearby railroad. Many of the hobos and poor folks couldn't afford to buy food, so they were often hungry. From time to time, some of these folks would come up to the house to ask for something to eat. Since the Stevens family was kind and generous, someone from the family would offer them a sandwich and a cup of tea. They would also offer to let the hobos sit on the couch in their house to get a moment of peace and rest. There was a time when a winter storm came through the area where the Stevens family lived. There was plenty of snow on the ground, and the air was freezing cold outside. While it was cold and snowy one day, a hobo came to the door and knocked to ask for something to eat. Someone from the Stevens family opened the door and welcomed the hobo inside the house. They wanted to give them shelter from the cold and give them something to eat. The Stevens family gave the hobo a sandwich and a cup of tea. They let the hobo relax and sit on the couch in the living room. Some of the family talked to the hobo to help keep him company and to help him feel welcomed. The Stevens family members made gradual moves to get back to their normal chores and cleaning up around the house. A short time later, young Mike went to check on the hobo to make sure he was still resting comfortably. As Mike went back to the room where the hobo had been, he noticed the guest wasn't there anymore. The young child Mike then checked the rest of the house and still couldn't find the guy. The only thing that young Mike could find was a hat that had been left in the room where the guy had been sitting. So young Mike grabbed the hat to give it back to the hobo. Mike looked out the front door to see if the hobo had gone outside. Mike didn't see the hobo outside. He then looked down to see if there were any footprints in the snow, but didn't see any footprints either. The young boy also looked out from the windows on the back side of the house. Mike couldn't figure out where the hobo had gone. He didn't seem to be anywhere inside the house, nor did the guy seem to have left the house. There were no footprints in the snow on the front of the house, the back of the house, or the sides of the house. Mike told the rest of the family, but they looked and couldn't find the hobo or any signs he had left. No one in the family could figure out what happened to the hobo. The only thing they knew was that the hobo had been there, but now he was gone, and he had left his hat behind. The problem was that no one knew where the hobo had gone, but the hat proved that he had been there. A thought came to the family's minds about an old Bible verse about angels. The verse spoke of reminding people to be hospitable and kind to the poor, to strangers, and to travelers. A person can never tell if they could have shown hospitality to angels. It was also mentioned that some people have entertained angels while being unaware of it. The family wondered if this is what happened in this situation with the hobo, especially since there was no evidence that the hobo was inside the house or that he had ever left it. All that seemed to remain was the hobo's hat. Yet he had vanished without a trace, which we know is not normal for any mere mortal, living, breathing human being. So perhaps this may have been one of those occasions when they met an angel. Perhaps they even entertained an angel or showed the angel some hospitality. Who knows what it could have been? They never did find the guy, nor did they find any evidence that he had left. Perhaps we should all remember to show kindness and hospitality to people, because you never know when a mysterious stranger might be in need or might be checking up on you to see if you are kind-hearted or not. Now for our second story. The second story I'd like to tell is about a story my father told our family, and this might be a bit eerie. A few years ago, I asked my family for some scary stories from their lives or tales of paranormal activity they witnessed. My dad forgot about the story where he was at my sister's house and heard a voice call out to him. You can see that in the story in Season 1, Episode 4, titled, A Woman's Voice. Since my dad didn't remember that story, he did remember something scary that happened to him as a child. Here is that story. I call this story The Midnight Intruder. One night when Grandpa Harold Hollingster was a little boy, a very scary thing happened. Everyone in the house had gone to sleep one night, and young Harold was asleep in his bed as well. A noise woke up young Harold, and he noticed he heard a strange noise at the window. The more he heard the noise, the more scared he got. It sounded like someone was trying to break into the house to rob them. Harold was so scared that he could hardly move. He lay in his bed and was too scared to even make a noise. His heart was pounding very hard, and he had a hard time breathing because he was so scared. He listened and heard the window rattling, and he leaped out of his bed and ran. He went to his mom and dad in their bedroom. He went to his mom, who was in bed, and told her that he heard a noise at his window. He said that he thought it sounded like someone was trying to break in to rob them. They went back to check on the window to see what the problem was. As they got back to the bedroom, they noticed they could still hear a noise from the window. They slowly walked up to the window to see what was making the noise. As they looked at the window, it looked like something was pushing up against the window from the outside. They couldn't see anything in the darkness outside of the window because it was night. They wondered if it was a burglar trying to break the window to get into the house to rob them. As they looked closer at the window, it didn't seem like a man was outside. As they strained their eyes to see what was outside the window, they could see what looked like a large face. The large face seemed to push up against the window. Harold wondered if it could be some kind of monster that kept pushing up against the window. As they tried to get a better look, they heard a dreadful scraping noise. The large face rubbing against the window screen made the scraping noise. Even though it was eerie, they tried to look even closer. As they looked closely to see what was outside the window, they realized it was not a man. As they looked even closer and their eyes focused through the darkness, they could see what was outside the window. As they looked intently, they thought it looked like a cow. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness a bit more, it looked like a cow that was licking the window screen. They strained their eyes some more and realized that it did look like a cow. Now, it turns out they lived on a farm, and it seemed like someone had left the gate to the pasture open. The cow had gotten loose and had walked up to the house. They got the cow back into the pasture and locked the gate, and then they went back to bed. It took a while for them to calm down, but they finally got back to sleep. They had quite a fright, but they felt relieved that it was only a minor incident and no one got hurt. This story and the one in Season 1, Episode 6, Story Number 2, taught me some good lessons on critical thinking and debunking our own perceptions. These incidents helped me learn that we need to keep from jumping to conclusions and thinking everything is a monster or a ghost. Yet on some occasions I tried everything I could to debunk things that I saw, and I couldn't explain things away. Those were occasions where I had to accept that I had seen apparitions and shadow figures, even though no one else was supposed to be home at the time. This leads to my third story. This next story is where I had a terrible nightmare that made me wonder if it was a ghostly or demonic attack. I call this story The Black Fog. One night I was having a dream where I was walking through a dry and rocky desert wilderness. I saw hills and mountains in the distance, and a small number of dried up trees in the opposite direction. As I walked through this area, I noticed a dark cloud moving across the sky. I wondered if it would rain or if this meant that there would be a thunderstorm. As I kept walking through the wasteland, I noticed that the dark cloud in the sky was moving down toward the ground. It even seemed to move toward me. As the black cloud came down to ground level, it seemed to creep across the ground like a low-level fog. It was slowly billowing as if it flowed across the ground like a flood of waters that was in slow motion. As the black fog got closer, I saw it creeping along the ground toward me. I thought it seemed odd that it didn't spread around the whole area like fog and block my view. It only stayed within 2 feet of the ground and kept moving across the ground toward me. As the black fog moved toward me and touched my legs, I thought I heard whispering. It sounded like there were many people whispering around me. I looked around, but I didn't see any people around me. I only saw the black fog billowing across the ground. I tried to listen intently to see if I could figure out what the whispering voices were saying. I noticed they seemed to talk about how they hated me and people like me. They also mentioned that they wanted to hurt me, beat me up, and kill me if they could. I sensed that this black fog was evil and that it was not just one big creature. It seemed like there were many creatures that made up the black fog. I got a little afraid of the strange and hateful words whispered about me, so I tried to walk away from the black fog. As I attempted to walk away, I could sense the whispering voices saying that they didn't want me to get away. Some voices said that they wanted to stop me. I got even more fearful, and I ran so the black fog wouldn't be in contact with me, and I hoped to get away from it. I hoped to get away so I wouldn't ever have to interact with it ever again. I turned and started to run away, Yet as I was running through the black fog, a part of it seemed to move up from the ground like a tentacle. It formed a long stream of black smoke that reached out for me. The black steam felt like a hand holding my leg to restrain me from leaving. Another tentacle of the black fog reared up and lunged at me, hitting me like a strong punch in the stomach. I tried to run away, but another tentacle of the black fog grabbed my leg to restrain me once again. A part of the black fog reared up from the ground again and began punching me. I tried to hold up my arms to block the punches, but it didn't seem to help much. I tried to hit back, but my fists went through the black fog like it was an intangible cold steam, so I didn't seem to hit anything at all. I tried to get up, but the fog kept grabbing my leg, pushing me down, and punching me. It kept doing this again and again. I realized it had knocked me down several times, so I stayed on the ground while propped up on my arm. I hoped it wouldn't be able to keep pushing me down if I stayed there on the ground. There was a pause in the beating, so I tried to crawl away, but the black fog was quick to stop any attempts to escape. The black fog picked me up once again, but this time it picked me up by the middle of my body and slammed me on the ground a few times. I felt pain throughout my body. I felt like I couldn't get up or move anymore at all. As I lay there on the ground, another long tentacle of the black fog grabbed my leg and dragged me across the ground. It kept dragging me through the rocky desert wilderness toward an area that had a few sparse, dried-up trees. I was sore from the beating and from getting dragged across the ground. As it dragged me through a short section of the desert wilderness, it seemed to drag me toward a small storage shed. The shed had concrete walls, a concrete floor, and a concrete ceiling. It was shaped similar to a rectangular box with a doorway on the side. As I got dragged toward the shed, I heard the whispering voices speaking to one another. They were trying to decide what to do with me. They wanted to interrogate me. It also seemed like they didn't mind getting violent with the interrogation. As it dragged me into the shed through a doorway, I felt the smooth concrete floor as I was sliding across it. I then noticed that the dark entity lifted my legs as if it had raised me off the floor by a crane. It lifted me up off the floor and held me in the air with my legs lifted high up in the air. My head was hanging down, but I couldn't reach the floor to touch it. I could sense that they were asking me who I was and what I was doing there. I didn't seem to answer fast enough for them, so some billows of black fog lunged out and punched me with blow after blow. They didn't seem interested in my answers because I couldn't get a word out before they would hit me again. It stopped punching me for a moment and left me on the floor once again. It seemed like it was contemplating what it would do next. As I lay on the floor, I wanted to move myself toward a wall so I could prop myself up against it. I scooted toward the wall, but my movements were slow. As I reached the wall, I propped myself up and leaned against it. The black fog didn't seem to want to allow me to move around, so it grabbed my legs again to lift me up from the floor. It then started slamming me on the floor and slamming me against the wall repeatedly. I became so sore from getting slammed around that when it finally stopped, I couldn't move at all. I lay there in a semi-conscious condition. It was a struggle to breathe while I lay on the floor. I didn't want to move or get up since I hurt all over, and any attempt to move only caused more pain. I was also a little afraid that if I tried to move, I would only invite more beatings. The black fog seemed to want more information from me, so it repeatedly slammed me on the floor. I was in so much pain at this point that every part of my body was hurting, and I could no longer raise my arms to protect my head. My head hit the floor, and I could no longer fight to stay conscious. I blacked out and was unconscious for what seemed like a few minutes. The black fog left me laying on the floor when I blacked out. As I regained consciousness, I noticed my whole body was hurting, and I couldn't open my eyes at first. I could only lay there in pain. I tried to open my eyes, but I could barely open them at all. My vision was blurred, and I saw the inside of the concrete shed. I then passed out from the pain once again. As I regained consciousness, I started to open my eyes, and I noticed I was no longer in the concrete shed. I then focused my eyes to see that I was waking up in my bed in my bedroom. As I passed out in the dream, I seemed to wake up in real life. What seemed strange was that it didn't seem like a mere dream, because as I awoke, my whole body hurt. I had pain all over my body, and I was hurting so badly that it seemed like I couldn't move. I didn't want to move because trying to do so seemed to increase the pain. I wondered if ghosts or demons had attacked me in my sleep. I also wondered if something traumatic had happened to me that I couldn't remember. I also wondered if a spirit had made me have the dream so it could attack me in the dream. I slowly moved a little and tried to roll over so I could get up out of my bed. I slowly rolled over and sat up on the side of my bed. I sat up so slowly that it was like I was in slow motion. I tried to stand up so I could get myself dressed in the morning, but I felt sore all over my body. It was a struggle to get my sore and tired muscles to move again. It took a while for the pain to wear off and go away as well. I gave more thought to whether demons or ghosts had attacked me because I was still in pain a few minutes later. It felt like someone had actually beaten me up in real life. I had this dream in the autumn of 2006. I remember the cool weather that came to the area throughout the night and the morning. Yet I still couldn't explain why I was in so much pain all over my body and why the pain continued long after I woke up. I can also say that this wasn't the only encounter I had in dealing with this black fog creature. Whatever it was, I encountered it a few more times through the years. If you want to hear more about my encounters with the black fog creature, please leave a comment in the comments section below this video. Some of those later experiences where I saw the black fog creature, I got temporarily possessed. I'll give more of the details of those stories in Season 2 of the show next year. That's the end of this story, so if you liked any part of this episode, please click the like button. You can also let us know what you liked about the show in the comments section. Please watch all the way to the end of the credits for an important message. Please share this video with your friends or anyone else who is interested in eerie and paranormal stories. I've got enough stories to tell for a second and maybe a third season of the show. So remember, in the meantime, always be leery of the dark. As for now, I'll see you in the next episode. Good night. Don't let the bedbugs bite, and don't let the ghosts give you a fright. See you later.